Erling Haaland touched the ball about 30 times against Brazil. 30. Some central midfielders get that in a single 10-minute spell, and by the end of the night, he'd scored twice, knocked Brazil out of a World Cup, and strolled back to the halfway line like a man who'd remembered he left the oven on. For almost 80 minutes, Brazil kept him completely quiet. Gabriel stayed glued to him. Alisson mopped up the few half chances that drifted near his box. Haaland barely existed. If you'd switched the game on at the 75th minute, you'd have had to squint to find him. And then, in about 4 seconds of actual football, he won the entire match. The first goal was pure athleticism. A cross came in, he rose above everyone like he'd been fired out of a cannon, and he powered a header past Gabriel, a man he happens to have real history with. Gabriel plays for Arsenal, Haaland plays for Manchester City, and it's been a very one-sided rivalry. So climbing over the top of him to score wasn't just a goal. It was a personal message, delivered by airmail.
I should not be interrupting them too much with all the dribblings and passes, you know. I'm a striker, so I want to be in the box as much as possible. Of course, I don't want to go out on the side. What should I do there? You know, we have other players doing that, you know, so I'm not the one that's gonna create chances. I have my role in the team.
He's a striker that every big club in Europe has wanted to sign.
Then, minutes later, he picked the ball up outside the box, stood there like a nonchalant giant deciding what to have for dinner, and stroked it into the bottom corner. 2 moments, 2 goals, and Brazil were done. Here's the strange part. If you rewatch the build-up to that first goal, Haaland is walking for most of it. Not jogging. Walking. He looks like a guy who wandered onto the pitch to ask where the toilets were. This is the thing people have spent years refusing to understand about him. He doesn't need to dominate the ball for 90 minutes. He can vanish for long stretches of a game, to the point where you'll genuinely forget he's on the field, and then he wins the whole thing by himself in 4 seconds. And it wasn't a one-off. He got a brace against Iraq where his general play was pretty ordinary by his standards, and he still walked off with 2 goals. He did it against Senegal. He did it against Ivory Coast. The opponent changed, his overall performance went up and down, but the goals kept arriving on schedule, like he had them on a subscription. This is the same criticism that's followed him since the day he arrived in England. When he signed for City, people looked at his touch count and decided that was the story. He doesn't get involved, he drifts through games, he only scores tap-ins, as if scoring tap-ins is an accident, and not the single hardest thing to do consistently in football. And Haaland himself has never pretended to be anything else. He said it plainly. He doesn't want to be out on the wing knitting passes together, he wants to be in the box. He's a striker, and that's the job. And he does that job better than almost anyone who has ever lived. But because he isn't collecting the ball in midfield and dribbling past 3 men, a certain type of fan decided it didn't count as greatness. What that misses is that the thing that looks lazy is actually his hardest skill. He's almost never caught offside. His movement is constant, half a yard here, a check away there, and all of it is invisible unless you're specifically looking for it. He scores tap-ins because he already knows where the ball is going to land before the man crossing it does. That isn't doing nothing. That's doing the one thing that matters and cutting out everything that doesn't. And this is where we've been getting it wrong. We watch a player take 50 touches, beat a couple of men, spray some passes around, and we call it a great game, even when nothing came of any of it. Then we watch a man touch the ball 30 times, score twice, and beat Brazil, and some part of our brain files it under quiet performance. We reward the effort we can see, and we get suspicious of the efficiency we can't. Haaland has spent his whole career being quietly punished for making the hardest job in the sport look boring. The numbers this man puts up are not normal, and they never were. Top scorer in the Champions League at 20 years old. 50 Champions League goals faster than any player in history. The fastest player ever to reach 100 Premier League goals. These aren't good season numbers. These are the numbers of someone rewriting the record books before he's even hit his prime, and doing it so consistently that we've started treating the miraculous as his baseline. Go back to Dortmund, because that's where the physical stuff first got frightening. 86 goals in 89 games, and back then he was a different kind of striker because Dortmund leaned on him for more than finishing. He carried the ball, he created, and he was involved in the build-up in a way people now pretend he can't manage. He also broke the Bundesliga's top speed record, hitting 36 kilometers an hour, which for a man built like a wardrobe is genuinely offensive to the rest of us. The raw tools that looked almost clumsy when he was a teenager had turned into the most unstoppable weapon in the sport. So when it was time to leave, he could have gone anywhere. Every giant in Europe wanted him. He picked Manchester City because his dad had played there, he had a connection to the club, and City had everything except a genuine number 9. They dominated England for years and kept falling short in the Champions League, so he was supposed to be the missing piece. And yet, even with that record in Germany, people doubted whether his game would translate. Then he missed a big chance in the Community Shield. City lost to Liverpool, and for about a week the internet genuinely tried to argue that Darwin Núñez was the better signing. Those doubts aged like milk left on a radiator. As soon as the league started, he and City looked like a cheat code. 2 goals on his Premier League debut against West Ham, a hat-trick against Crystal Palace, another one against Nottingham Forest 4 days later, which made him the fastest player in Premier League history to reach 2 hat-tricks. Then a third straight home hat-trick, tearing apart Manchester United. By the end of that first season, he'd matched Thierry Henry's record for goal contributions in a 38-game campaign, won the Premier League Golden Boot and the European Golden Shoe, scored 12 in the Champions League, and helped City finally win the trophy that had haunted them for a decade, a treble, in year 1. You'd think dominating what a lot of people call the best league in the world in your first season would end the criticism. Instead, people just found new things to complain about. The conversation shifted from whether he could score to whether he showed up in the biggest games. He dominated the early rounds of the Champions League, went quiet in a couple of the later ties, and suddenly that was the story. The treble happened, and the praise floated over to De Bruyne, to Rodri, to Guardiola. The following season, he won another Golden Boot and another title, scored 27 league goals despite missing a big chunk through injury, and the year somehow became about Foden and Rodri instead. He'd reached a level so high that 27 goals, a career year for almost any striker alive, got treated as an off year for him. He became a victim of his own standard. And that's before the part that doesn't show up on a stat sheet at all. Even when Haaland isn't scoring, he bends the entire shape of the game around himself. Defenses drop 10 yards deeper the second he makes a run, because the alternative is him in behind, and once he's in behind, it's finished. That extra space is where the rest of his team gets to live. Rodri's goal in the Champions League final doesn't happen if the backline isn't terrified of the giant pinning them in. He does damage in games where the highlight reel insists he did nothing, and you just have to know where to look. Now put the international record next to all of that. For years, casual fans never saw any of this because Norway kept missing the big tournaments. Most people only tune in for a World Cup or a Euros, and Haaland spent the best years of his career building one of the great striker resumes of all time in leagues those fans only half watched. The hardcore crowd knew. The Football Manager players had known for about 7 or 8 years, which is its own kind of prophecy, but the average viewer, catching the occasional Champions League highlight, simply never got to see it. Then look at how he dragged Norway back. This is a country that hadn't been to a World Cup in nearly 3 decades, and the last time they were there, Haaland's dad Alfie was the one playing. Funnily enough, that 1998 Norway side also beat Brazil. The qualifying campaign this time was ridiculous. Norway won every single game, scored 29 goals in their first 6 qualifiers, and finished with a goal difference of +32. And the biggest single reason was Haaland. 16 goals in 8 qualifiers, which was double the total of the next highest scorer in all of Europe. He tied Robert Lewandowski's record for the most goals in a qualifying campaign, while playing fewer games to do it. And the single most Haaland moment of the whole run came against Israel. It was a 5-0 win, and he missed 2 penalties and still finished the match with a hat-trick. He handed the opposition 2 free chances to slow him down, and it didn't even dent the final score. It didn't matter if Ødegaard was injured, and it didn't matter what Norway needed on a given night, whether that was a leader, a goal, or someone to just take the game and end it. Haaland kept finding a way. And this isn't new either. Back at the Under-20 World Cup, he finished as Norway's top scorer, and once put 9 goals past Honduras in a single game. 9. In one match. That's not a footballer, that's a rounding error. He's now averaging more than a goal a game for Norway, a rate that looks less like a career and more like someone left the difficulty setting on easy. Which is why the conversation has quietly turned to Cristiano Ronaldo's all-time international goals record. For years, that number felt untouchable, one of those records that would just stand forever. It doesn't feel that way anymore. If Haaland holds anything close to this pace, there's a real chance he breaks it while barely turning 30, and does it in far fewer games than Ronaldo needed. So when people say Haaland just made things painfully obvious, this is what he made obvious. Not that he's good because we knew he was good. He made it obvious that the way we measure strikers is broken. That the man touching the ball the fewest times can be the most decisive player on the pitch, that you can walk through most of a World Cup knockout tie against Brazil, look completely uninterested for 80 minutes, and still be the single reason your country is still in the tournament. 30 touches, 2 goals. 1 team sent home. Turns out that was always the whole point.